tell the truth and nothing but the whole truth. Not the proof. Tell the truth and nothing but the whole truth.
You got what I'm, now I know, and you do your own research. It's not a racist thing, it's a truth thing. Now when we accepted this Christ to be white, nobody has said a problem with that. Even though all the evidence, even in the Bible itself, scriptures was telling us, but we still accepted it because we love God. An angel told Daniel, shut up the book to the end. Close it up to the end. Knowledge is going to be revealed in the end. Well, this is the knowledge that God is revealing, because it's very important to know who's who. Are you understanding what I'm saying? And so now that we are trying to find out some things, we have all kinds of opposition in people, even our own people, because it's so difficult for slaves to know they was special. It was something about them. When all your life you've been told you was a slave, that might have been the most damaging that might have done the most damage to my self-esteem that I ever had at the realization when I went to school that my lineage went back to slavery. And I'm seeing these white boys identifying with Christopher Columbus and identifying with Franklin and all them. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know who I am and I have no idea whatever to say. And all they told me was I was a slave, and that's the extent of my knowledge. That hurt my self-esteem. I saw the white boy when he found out who he was and who I was. He looked down on me at that point. And I felt low because I had no history to point to that I wasn't always in this condition. But that was the white supremacist or the colonial intent to keep you from knowing who you are, so you would never ever want to be more than what they told you you are. So our little thug Negroes in the street are just slaves. The images have come from Jewish and European people who go into the hood the same way they went and got step infection and sleep and eat and get the worst of us and put us on TV and say, this is y'all, and they pay our people to degrade ourselves and coon on TV, and they'll give millions of dollars to look bad and look degrading, and so they can put the image out there that this is who y'all are, because we trying to remove y'all so far away from who we know y'all are that y'all God will not even recognize y'all. You got what I said. He's talking about bringing back people that were scattered. Are we still scattered? But then he's talking about these are the last days. It's talking about we're going to be bringing back the people that were scattered. I will also gather all nations, and I will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will plead with them for my people, for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So the judgment you think is coming, you don't know why it's coming. They told you the judgment was coming just for sin, just because people are living unrighteous. No, the judgment that's really coming is because of what they have done to God's people, to his descendants, to Israel. Are y'all there? Now, how in the world is those people over in Israel, if he's talking about people that are scattered? Israel is scattered and blind. Don't know who they are. Come on, y'all got to deal with this. What you got to ask yourself is why these Bible teachers are not telling you. Because they in on the lie. That's part of white supremacy. That's how they kept you from knowing who you was. They didn't tell you. There's people who you trusted, when you read them commentaries and them scholarly books, and Darby and Schofield and them people who and the Gideons and all these people that translated the Bible and then commented on it. Why didn't they tell you who the Bible was talking about? Because they was a part of the white supremacy, to keep you thinking that God wasn't talking about black folk in this Bible. When the whole goal, now how is it that these people had the original scrolls, translated them, and did not get the point that Moses went down in Egypt and hid in Pharaoh's house, when you know Pharaoh was black people? Why? Now it seemed like the scholars would have at least brought that point out. Let's go further. How is it when the Christ is born, he starts to run again from the Edomites, Herod and them, but he runs down into Egypt? How is a white boy going to go in Egypt and hide? But the scholars who translated and commentated that, why didn't they bring that issue out? What about when a time when the people have mistaken Paul for an Egyptian? telling you the Bible is all about black people. See, do you see what I'm saying? So the conspiracy, remember I said as the nations came together and said, we're going to cut them off many people. So there's a conspiracy right there. Bible called it a confederacy. So the conspiracy goes into books, language, teaching, knowledge. All of that was a conspiracy to keep you from, so if you really want to be honest, history is about you. Because it's all about nobody telling you, keeping away from you who you are. Look, how I said this the other day, how hard would it be to keep you bamboozled for 400 some years? What a great conspiracy that is. When the Bible's talking about you.
Your grandfather was the founding, one of the founding fathers of the state of Israel?
Yes, he was.
Tell us about this.
Yes, he was. The generation of my grandparents was the generation of the first Jews to take on Zionism as an ideology and take on this idea of establishing a Jewish homeland in Palestine. And he was very active. He became a leader within the movement. He was a member of the de facto Jewish government before the State of Israel was established. And he was one of the signers on the Declaration of Independence when the State of Israel was established.
Okay, and then from there, your father actually, he was the general.
My father was, yes, both my parents were born in Palestine. So they're the first generation Israelis, if you will, first generation Jews who were born there. And my father, as a young man, while still in high school, joined the Zionist militia. He became an officer. So in the war of 1948, when the Zionists occupied most of Palestine, he was an officer already. And then he remained in the military as a career officer. And by 1967, he was already a general and a member of the Israeli Central Command, the High Command.
Somebody's pointing the finger and say, this guy's anti-Semitic. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I'm Jewish, so being anti-Semitic is nonsense. Number one. Number two, being anti-Semitic means being racist against Jews. I'm not racist against Jews. But I am critical of the State of Israel. I'm critical of Zionism, which has really nothing to do with Jews, although they claim to. So there's nothing anti-Semitic about criticizing Israel. In fact, most Jews don't even live there. Most Jews never accepted Zionism, so I don't think that has anything to do with it. And it's a claim that's being thrown out when there's nothing else to say. When the other side, the pro-Israeli side, the side that supports the violence in Palestine, has nothing to say, they say anti-Semitic. Well, so they say anti-Semitic.
What if someone says, look, he's just a self-hating Jew? Have you heard this statement?
Yeah, well, I certainly don't hate myself. That's nonsense. Yeah. And I don't hate anybody else. I think it's one of those things they throw at you when they've got no argument.
I just had a rabbi give me an analogy. He said, look, imagine you left your home and then someone came and occupied it and then you try to get it back and then they went to the judge. Have you heard some of these analogies? Maybe you can.
Yeah, that's assuming that, that's taking it to a place which I don't usually go. That's making the assumption that today's Jews are really the descendants of the ancient Hebrews that used to live in that part of the world some 3,000 years ago. That's making the assumption that today's Jews are really the descendants of the ancient Hebrews that used to live in that part of the world some 3,000 years ago. That's a bit of a stretch for me. And even if it was true, I don't think it, I agree with him. It doesn't justify. I did not live there 3,000 years ago. My grandparents immigrated from Ukraine. Their parents, their grandparents didn't live there. And I don't know any Jew that can trace his or her ancestors back to the ancient Hebrews. I did not live there 3,000 years ago. My grandparents immigrated from Ukraine. Their parents, their grandparents didn't live there. And I don't know any Jew that can trace his or her ancestors back to the ancient Hebrews. So that's a lot of, that's a lot of myth there. And I don't think it's relevant.
Proof. I swear to tell the truth, nothing but the whole truth. Not the proof. I swear to tell the truth, nothing but the whole truth.